I will dominate, and this is Thorin's channel. The guy who, if I keep on associating with him, will get me banned on Twitch eventually.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be GrabbZ, who is obviously a many-time champion coach in the LEC, most notably, obviously, with G2, but before that, it was ROCCAT, and now it's been, obviously, BDS and to be determined. Hopefully there is to be determined, but it seems like there will be. So, GrabbZ, actually, the first question I have for you is one I don't normally ask people, but I'm actually very interested in your case to ask this, which is, why did you ever want to be a coach in League of Legends? Because you will know the era when you became a coach was when people still debated, even top players, like, is coaching even a thing? And do even my coaches do anything? So it was known for a long time this is like a very thankless job. So what's the drive? Why make this your career?
I mean, I was around for 1 year before that, right, as analyst for Unicorns and Giants. So I had some touching points with teams. And I honestly just felt like what the coaches are doing currently, I can do as well. Shouldn't be too hard. And then I had some contacts with in ROCCAT before, so they just took me in. It wasn't planned this way, but ultimately I was studying economy at the same time. But I played football a lot in the youth, right? And I just couldn't see myself sitting in a cubicle and doing the same stuff 9 to 5. So this felt like a good way to connect my second passion next to football and youth gaming with something I can have a career in. So I just tried, and I mean, lots of luck involved as well, right? But here I am, now currently unemployed again.
Did you actually yourself also think, like, back then at least, coaches, a lot of them are like not really doing anything, or it's very primitive? So did you have a similar sense yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I thought, like, I mean, of course, like every time you come in, you think yourself, you're the hot shot, you can do everything better. I came with attempted to be the typical German football coach, and then I quickly realized that esports players are way more sensitive, and being the hardest doesn't work. So if people think that I was like harsh in the past on BDS, then they have no idea how I was in ROCCAT. Like, that was way worse. And I had to quickly change my ways to realize, okay, esports is just a different scene.
I mean, along those lines, I'd actually like to expand on that, because I know when people talk to you, like, football is your game, it's the one that you're into. And if people don't know, it's weird for Americans, because I always have to tell them, like, we just call coaches managers. Like, I know manager, you think it's the guy who gets the water. Manager is head coach, essentially. And especially in football, like, they really do run everything in the top teams. That's why everyone worships Guardiola and all those guys, like, because it is their whole system. You can see they have the keys to the car and they get to decide every aspect. The joke in football is they even half GM, like, which is another different role in American. So they can pick the players. So, right, does this imply, like you're saying, when you came in, did you have a vision of, like, I can run a team like that and I can set the culture and these things? Because as you say, if people know German football in particular, it's very systems based. I mean, famously, the national team even does leave people out, even if they're the best player, if they just don't fit the system or the right player, or they don't have the attitude and all that jazz. It's not like Brazil where you just put everyone good in or whatever, So was this some vision you had of you could integrate this in esports?
Not necessarily the whole GM part, because in Germany it's also, there's a coach and a basic GM behind them often, right? So I didn't have the Premier League vision in that regard, but I just saw the lack of discipline and lack of systems, as I mentioned, and just practice it every day, right? So discipline, of course, on player part, but also systems of how to actually practice were lacking back there as well. So I just felt like, even though I know, like, I just make sure, right? I know I was like close to being pro. I played like 4th Division Youth or something, which is relatively high, but not even close to being pro level. But I felt like just from having that experience, I could help a team. So I just went for it.
I mean, one thing that I always think is an interesting discussion is one of the reasons why people who try to crowbar sports concepts into esports often fail is because actually, like you alluded to, the kind of person who would become an athlete in real life isn't the person who becomes the cyber athlete, as they used to be dreadedly called. Like, if, as you will know, they're way more introverted, shy, nerdy, lack of social, often not confident even. I often say to people, that's why you get players who are amazing one split and then they're just bad the next one. It's like their whole confidence wasn't like, I'm just me. It was like, oh, I'm playing well at the moment. So fragile, right?
I mean, the best way I can explain it was in ROCCAT, especially with GrabbZ, who was very sensitive. Like, again, from football, it was, if the coach said jump, the only question was how high and how often, right? If you ask anything at all. But there was, I tell him do something, it's like, why? I'm like, what do you mean why? I'm telling you to do so. If I tell you to play for solo queue right now, you do it, right? That was my mindset. But I quickly realized that, as I mentioned, the players are just more sensitive, I think. Discipline-wise, they're like comparable to football, at least to 11, 12 years old, honestly. Still, to this day, I think there are many players who just don't realize what it means to be a professional player. That's also why the players who are down to grind, right? Like the Purpses, for example, why they stick out so much, because they actually have the drive to be the best, because that's, I think, the biggest issue every coach in the LSC will hear, right? Is that players say, I want to be the best in my position. And you tell them work for it, and like, maybe not. So it's really hard to find these driven people, whereas in traditional sports, of course, these get weeded out over years, right? Because you go from Team E to Team D, C, B, and by that time, you only have players who actually want to improve and be good together. And that is missing in esports, and I think right now with the AL system at least, it got better, for sure. It's not the same as in 2016, but it's still hard to find, let's say, 5 players who together want to be the best and put in the work.
For the sake of grouping similar topics up, I'll skip ahead sort of, which is if people saw the recent Best Damn League show we did where we actually talked about BDS and how that was working and the fact that you were operating like the academy team and the LEC team sort of simultaneously in terms of like you had to make both be good, etc. A point you made that was very key, I thought relates to this, we can bring it back, is it sounds like to you also, unlike a lot of people in League, like I would say this is an example where someone like XL did the worst job ever. Like they just tried to get what they thought were 5 individually good players and then they thought you shove all together, you know, sprinkle some fairy dust, question mark, and it works, right? Whereas it seems like you're more of the perspective that you will even potentially trade away like a more skilled player or whatever that means if you think the culture fits better. Like it sounds like that's a big deal to you, is like the structure of the team and what the vision of the team is, right? It's not just having good players.
Yeah, of course, because the whole system, what Excel had, works if you're winning, right? But as soon as you're losing, the whole culture, which wasn't there, breaks down even further. Whereas if you have people who have the initial drive or the drive within themselves, they will keep working hard, right? Even if they're losing. But if you like, I think it's called like fair weather footballers, right? People who are only good if the weather's perfect, if they're in a good mood. If you have 5 of these, then of course you're going to crash really hard if week 1 doesn't go well. So I want players who, without me having to tell them, of course I'm a coach, right? But a coach can do so much. Like if you think about every great in any sport, they didn't need the coach to tell them practice more. They didn't need to be like babysat, right? They just stood there and kept practicing. And of course, to a certain degree, you can't have the same people here in esports, but you want to have the players who realize themselves how important it is to actually put in the work. And I want to actually also value that, right? And show the players, for example, the whole ex-Matti Crony thing, right? I'm not saying that Crony didn't work hard, but Matti was someone who came up and was one of the few players in the team who actually practiced really hard. So I felt like I am the first one on Twitter who like shits on Excel or whoever, or mad for benching Rika, right? I would be the same if I then said, you know what, I want someone who's at that point marginally better and don't reward the work that Matti put in. And that's a hill I'm willing to die on, and I cannot died on it.
Sure.
Which ultimately, it's sport, right? I took the decision. In hindsight, you can say, of course, Crown is a better player, but if I tell my teammates or my players I want to have a system or an environment where people try hard, and the one player who tries the hardest gets benched, I kind of lose face as well, right? So I will do the same decision again, basically.
Right, there was a couple of players in the ROCCAT days I want to ask about, because one, it's just a curiosity to me, is you actually were one of the latter day coaches of Freddy 122, who now obviously has been the coach of Rogue for all these splits. So there's a couple of angles on this. One, I'll be shocked if the answer is yes, but did you actually ever envision him being a coach? Because like, if people look at his track record, it's pretty fucking amazing. Like, since he took over Rogue. And then 2, what was it actually like to coach him? Because here's the weird thing to me, by the way, that he became a head coach. If people don't know, as a player, there's a reason he didn't do interviews. He's a very shy guy. He's sort of a guy who's pretty reserved, right? He's not the guy who's just giving comment on everything.
Yeah, so as a person, he's very timid, shy, but also he was the most stubborn motherfucker I had on the team.
Okay.
Like, if he believed in something, he really believed in it. And there was no talking to him. No, but I mean, he's someone with a lot of empathy, right? So he knows how it is to be a player. He can approach it that angle, which I never can because I never was a player. And he's like just really good at managing people, basically, right? In a different way than I would. Like I have a different style of managing people than he does. He's just a nice, quiet guy. So that's also why I thought if he becomes the coach, he would need someone with a strong voice next to him. But obviously, if you have players like Larsen, and I think people know right now at this point that he has a strong voice as a mid laner, then it can also work, right? Because you have the balance there. But him alone as a coach, I did envision it, but he's doing a fine job, and I think also he doesn't get a lot of praise where he should. I guess he's in a way kind of like I was in G2, where if they're doing good, it's only because of the players they got. And as well, I mean, he's less outspoken than me, so of course he gets even less praise, right? But I think he's doing a good job, like consistently over the years. Rogue and now Koi have been the most consistent team over the last 4 years, I think.
Yeah.
Even in practice, and sure, a lot could be players, but the coach also has to be a part of it, right? So props to him, for sure.
And then one name I thought would be interesting to ask about was you were one of the people who, in the latter part of when he still played AD, had Steeelback, who at the time was pretty infamous because obviously what made him look bad was when he came into the ULCS and he was on that FNATIC team that won. One, a lot of people don't think that team was that good because it was the one after him that did the 18-0. And two, a lot of people joke like he's the worst player to win LEC or whatever. And he did do a role swap later and became actually a pretty half-decent support. So I wondered in this time period, was he actually a good AD? What was he like as a player? Because it seemed like a lot of the other players just didn't like him for some reason. I don't really know why. He never seemed like he was an outspoken guy. He just seemed like a guy who did his job, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he was bad. I think his vision of the game was better than he could show while playing. I think that was his biggest issue, and I think that's also why the support role fits him more.
Right.
Because he actually, in hindsight, had a lot of good points about the game, but he just never could think of them while playing the game, right? Which is fair, can happen to someone. I mean, especially as coaches, right? We talk about the game on a freeze frame and think we're so fucking smart, but I can swear here a bit, right, in the show. I think it's fine. But doing it in the game is really hard, right? So I think he had a lot of good ideas. He was a decent player as a D, but his way to support was really well thought out by him.
And then the obvious angle is, like, we won't go through the whole ROCCAT angle, etc. Like, just people won't be that interested. But the one part that is interesting is, obviously, when we talk about when you came to G2, so people always forget, you didn't come for the super team. You came in the one where it was Jankos. It was the top side of the map, but then you brought over your ROCCAT bot lane, which was Hjarnan and Wadid. So the reason I thought that'd be interesting is, obviously now, if someone's a fan of G2, their whole angle's like, who cares about Hjarnan and Wadid, except that one Heimerdinger game. You obviously knew these guys and worked with them before. So what was the way that bot lane works? I've even heard, by the way, like, Hjarnan's another person who was just like a decent AD who got flamed for not being good enough. But the Wadid one's really weird because even though people loved him after he retired and went and did LCK and stuff, they were flaming him super hard when he was in this team. So what was this bot lane actually like to work with? Because, I mean, the fact that you had him in two different teams, you've got to see the highs and the lows, right?
Yeah, so working with them was a pleasure. I think that's also why you can see Hjarnan being vitality with perks right now, right? Because as a person, he's just easygoing, he's funny, he brings everything as a teammate you want. Wadid is a typical Korean in a way where they don't share their feelings, especially if they're alone. So it's really hard to get to him. So it got to a point where he said, guys, it's fine, we can win. Like, even scrims with like 0-10. He was just like, shut up, Wadid. Like, stop it. You don't have to be the good guy, you know? But they both just tried really hard to be part of the team. I also think, like, even back in ROCCAT, I preferred the 1v1 style. That means the whole Tam Kench Varus playstyle we had was something we had in ROCCAT as well. So, like, the transitioning to 1v1 and G2 was really easy for them. Wadid had, like, higher potential. Like, I don't think he was that bad. He was really consistent, right? Like, he had some games where he, like, smurfed extremely hard on Rakan. But then the better he got, the more in the game he thought he has to do the extra play, right? So he basically had this curve all the time. You never knew what you get with Wadid. So I also think ultimately that's what led to his downfall. And then in Rogue, they took him in because they thought he can be a leader because he came from G2, which is not his role at all. And then, of course, he couldn't shine, right? Because he got players next to him who expected him to be the leader. And he couldn't bring it. So kind of sad for him that his career ended this way. But I love working with them both. Really nice people.
If people look at your ROCCAT period, even though obviously technically from the G2 people like Hjarnan, we did have some big results. Like, there's not that many big names on this. Like, there's some people who were prospects at one point in time or were considered like decent in their role. There's not a lot of big names. There's not star players, put it that way. So how do you look at the ROCCAT period? Because to me, it actually made sense as to why they offered you the G2 gig to me, because it looked like you took a bunch of like pieces that like that guy was supposed to be good. He was all right. This guy hasn't yet become good. And you seemed like you did a decent job with him. You got more wins than people expected. ROCCAT at the end of your time was sort of like punching above their weight, you'd say.
Also, too, the two things that like stick to me with ROCCAT was one, the Clown Fiesta best of 3 against Origin, where both like 0-6, and this was probably the worst best of 2 or best of 3 in the history of the league. Like, it's so embarrassing to be part of it, but it was so funny. And then, consequently, we had the Miracle Run, and I'm still salty about the fact that Misfits griefed so hard against FNATIC because they wanted to practice for playoffs and gave them the Lee Sin Shen Cannon twice in a row. Because if Misfits wins that best of 3, we go to playoffs. FNATIC doesn't.
Oh, it was one of those ones where they controlled your fate.
Right. Yeah, basically.
Right.
Like, we beat G2, who didn't lose a single best of 3 the entire year. We beat them 2-1. And we were in the studio, and Betsy and me already got makeup because Riot wanted to bring us to the desk to celebrate the whole Miracle Run, right? So we had makeup on, Misfits leads 1-0, we're like happy, and then they give them the only comp back then for they could play was the Cannon sideline of Rekkles and then Shen and Lee Sin, right? That's the only thing they could play. They gave it to them twice, I think. And then afterwards said, yeah, he wanted to practice for playoffs already. I'm like, motherfucker. That's something I'm still salty about. Who's saying if you see this?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was, player material was not the best. Of course, I was not even close to be a good coach back then either, right? Every year,
Sure.
improve yourself either. So it would be kind of like.
What were your strengths at this time, do you think? What were you good at the time, or what do you need to work on?
I still think it's the main strength that I still have. Is more like I try to make the game as simple as possible and standardize a lot. Like especially if you watch EULCL still, LEC, sorry. There are so many random mistakes, right? Where a team just doesn't know where to position. And I think just making the game really boring and letting players know where they should be is something I can do pretty well. Which back then worked out, right? We had like very simple comes to play. We had like Faxi on Nar, we had the Barostam Kench bot lane, 1v1, how do we move with the waves, whether we like push our advantages and then just play the game A to B to Z, right? Which I think gave us a chance to win, and also why it clicked so late. Because all the fundamentals had to be actually set. Like,
right.
If you work on the fundamentals, it takes a long time, right?
Yes.
And I'm a coach. This is also something that probably in BDS broke my neck a bit. Is I hate this practice for one playstyle and just play it. I despise that so much. So, for example, if you'd asked me about Misfits last year, I would say, well, they knew that League is too bad, so just pick scaling on AD and mid and hope that the mid team is too shit too close, and then they all scale, right? Which in most games did with the Corki, Akali, the Jinx bot lane,
sure.
Whatever. And then in playoffs, they lose because the teams know, oh, this is for the draft, we're going to punish it, right? And I would never want to be a team that just says, let's get to playoffs for the sake of it and then lose in the first round. I would hate my life if that would be the case. So if you teach fundamentals, it only shows if you actually have all of them completed, right? Because if you do the 5 steps correctly, but then the 6th step is still missing, you still don't win, right?
Yes.
So I think that's also was part of us being 0-6 in the beginning. And then actually from that clicking, which also, of course, confidence is a big thing, right? After you win the first best of 3, you believe in yourself that you actually can win on stage, and then it's also easier.
One thing I know a lot of coaches I've talked to, especially privately, say is exactly what you're talking about. They say that the problem in League of Legends, at least with the old split format of like the splits into playoffs, into League Worlds, it's not that long afterwards if you qualify. They said the main problem is, unless basically you have an awesome off-season / pre-split boot camp or whatever, unless you do an awesome one of those where you nail a bunch of things, most times you just have to make the hard decision of like, do I actually try and get better as a team, or do I just try and win the next BO1? And they say, unfortunately, almost everyone does the opposite of you and just says, just to be cynical and keep my job, I'll just try and win the next BO1. And that means you do things like you say, like you do a band-aid, but the joke is, at least in the analogy of a band-aid, you'd eventually have to take it off. Like they just keep a band-aid on like a leg that's chopped off, and they just put a band-aid and hope it works. And eventually, like, they haven't done the fundamental change. Like, as you're saying, you're going to face a team that you haven't got time to change your style for, or they just directly counter you and it's over. So in the short term, it looks like you're the best coach, but actually it's very limited coaching, right?
And also, to be fair, right, it could be that Carter said this is the only thing this team can do, right? This doesn't mean the coach is bad. It just means that maybe if the team forced it, like the org, like there are some orgs who say we don't care about the season, just get the playoffs and you won. So it's not necessarily what the coach, but someone in that org made a decision that this is how they want to practice, and this is something that I'm heavily against. Like, even in BDS last year, we had so many discussions about, should we just pick Naut or just press R and go? And I said, no, we're going to play the fucking Karma bot lane. I don't care. You're going to practice this until we can play it on stage. And we got our leads and we threw them, which is also like coaching, of course. You can coach them to end games better, right? I will not say this is my player's fault, but this is just how I approach coaching. Like, I really, really strongly dislike this whole idea of just get to that hurdle and then what happens afterwards doesn't matter, because I don't think that's how coaching should be.
I mean, I could even extend it further, dude, and just say, like, in a way, I think your actual philosophy just makes more sense anyway, because think of 2 angles. If you're coaching a team like ROCCAT, well, there's no point just being like, or BDS is the best example. Like, if people don't know, BDS had a bunch of leads in games where maybe if they played like a one style, they would have just closed the game out, right? But you wouldn't have won the league. You'd have just been like 5th or 7th, you know. So, like, in that scenario, isn't it better to shoot for trying to be really good? And then likewise, even if someone says want a G2 type team, well, on G2 now you're thinking, yeah, I could win the league. I'm also trying to win worlds. So it almost feels like actually the short-term thinking is just very limited anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how sports work, right? You would try to save, as you said before, your own job, which is fair. Like, I am very lucky that I got big on G2. That means I have credit, right? I can have a shit year and still hopefully find a job, whereas a new coach can't. So of course I'm also talking from a very privileged position here, right? I'm really aware that not every coach can do it because their career is actually on the line.
Yes.
For example, I'm sitting here now saying this, but maybe if I know my next job is my last, possibly, I might change my opinion, right? I might be like, actually, no, I really want to do this. I have to like have a band-aid. Right now, though, I say I don't like it, but I understand every coach, especially new ones who try to do it, right? Because that's what matters, especially in the still the case that GMs or like orgs in general don't know what a good coach or good player is. Like we're still not there where the GMs actually, or like not every GM, right, but most GMs. So if you just look good and then Reddit says you're good, then very often you have a good chance of getting a contract.
Right, when you came to the first G2, which, as I say, was the same as the top side of the super team, but it was the Hjarnan and Wadid one. So people remember this was the year where FNATIC won everything, but G2 also went to semis at Worlds, right? In this lineup, what I wanted to ask was this: even though in the spring split you're in the finals, and then things were going quite well in like the funnel summer split for a while, but obviously you got upset by Misfits and didn't up, and you had to go through the regional, etc. Right? The thing is, from what I remember, I seem to remember, as if this is correct, that even though you were like second in spring, it was one of those ones where I think even players I talked to were like, "We're never actually going to beat FNATIC." Like that was just like the best we could do was come second. Like I was told behind the scenes, like that FNATIC team was just legit that year. Like you're never going to beat them. So how do you actually view that year? Because technically over the year you were the second best team, but like was there a chance to beat FNATIC? Could you have done better in the summer, for example?
Actually that year going back, I actually got upset by Misfits, I remember. And we were really shit going into that game. I think the week into Misfits we went like 2-25 in scrims or something.
Fucking hell. Okay.
Like it was really bad. The mood was really bad. And then we got stomped, right? It wasn't even close. We got like 3-0, I think. And then we said, you know what, everybody go home because we had the promotion tournament or the Worlds tournament after. Go home for like 10 days and we come back after and have a different mood, and that helped. I think it's just that I think the players, especially the ones who talked to you probably about this, felt that our bot lane wasn't strong enough to consistently beat their bot lane, which is a fair point, right? We can maybe win like 1 or 2 games. Like even the games in that finals we lost 3-0, like I remember 2 of them I think went like a 4 or 5k lead. And then Rekkles just got scared up with Kara mid lane and we couldn't kill him. So I think that was the fault behind it. And we weren't clear second best, I would say, right? We had a lot of struggles. I think also after the Misfits lost, we lost identity in a way and had to like throw everything overboard and find, okay, what actually is our natural inclination to play? And we went back to 1-3-1. I also think, actually, Peter Dunn did not ban Heimerdinger, I think, for 2 games against Blyce. Well, I think at that point we were better than us, but we got Heimer with Hjarnan. I remember because like the first game we picked Heimer in 4-5, and you know that everybody has a whiteboard, right? And of course after the games we talked to each other, and we saw at the whiteboard that for the next game they had written down, okay, we're gonna ban Heimer though on 4-5 now, but we just picked it on 3 because we knew they were gonna do it.
Right.
And we got Heimer two times in a row with Hjarnan, which is a free win. And I think then we beat Schalke afterwards, right? Or the other way around, I don't remember. But we weren't that great. We weren't even that great at Worlds, but we had like the tiebreaker against Flash Wolves, where we also got Heimer. And I will never forget as well that they picked Mordecai as a bot into it, and the entire team stops breathing, looks at Hjarnan, is this good? And he's like, no, this is dog shit. We're like, yay! We won the game! And then the RNG game happened, right? Which no one could have foreseen. Still one of my fondest memory in esports. But yeah, the team was just like, I think also back then Luca was a bit more like, not naive, but he was used to success and he was still a bit more brash than he would be now. So of course he also made a push to change bot lane pretty early, right? Because he felt unsatisfied with not winning, which he was used to. So I think that's also why the impression was a bit harsher on Hjarnan and Wadid. I don't think they were that dog shit like people think now in hindsight, right? Because ultimately we were top 4 in the world, so they can't be that bad. And they actually, I mean, I want to say they didn't play that bad, but we legit said during the best of 5 to them, if you don't lose the tower against Uzi before 10 minutes, that's awesome. We can win the game. Okay,
that was the expectations. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Just the 10 minutes. That's all we need. And then of course in the 5th game they actually kill him as well with the lantern block, right? So that's kind of hype.
By the way, on that Heimerdinger point, that is one of those areas where I think fans just get too lost on the fact that it doesn't mean Hjarnan has to be amazing. You've seen this with a bunch of champions. If someone just has a really weird champion pick that is it's never used by other teams in scrims, you just get these weird phenomenons where like even great players just sometimes don't know what to do against it. Or they like the classic, like I even would see this last year, dude, with like LCS teams against Seraphine. They would just like walk in the ult. Like, have you never seen this before? But the point is, no one else was playing it. So I get it that they're not sort of prepped for it. So like, what were you able to do with that pick? Because unironically, if people don't know, RNG was the best team of the whole year. Even that team didn't really know what to do against it. It looked like no one really did.
I mean, they're better every game, right? Because they were like, fuck this. I think what people don't appreciate, or like fans don't know, is like how much a locked ban changes in draft. The same thing that made us weaker in 2019 when we had to ban Hjarnan on both sides was the same with Hjarnan. We knew every game, either we win it because he's that good at a champion, or they ban it and we know a locked ban, which limits the options later on, right? So we could form every draft like he wanted, which is a huge benefit. So, but with the pick, it just basically, again, the 1v1, right? Because you can't go into Heimer, especially back then, it was impossible. And then also these Nash starts. You of course still had like a timer on you because Heimer gets outscaled by AD carries. But usually you can just be so aggressive in the mid game with it because it's so far ahead. You can't really gank him either. Like he just puts turrets down. If you gank him, you die. So you knew you're gonna win bot no matter what. And especially if you get it on red side, it means you win bot. You will probably win top. You have a good jungler. Like the draft is so easy to play. So that's why it was so good for us. And of course, like the mastery of a champ, like you said, is really important. And there was two factors. One is when people get too cocky, they're like, I'm better than this player. He can play Heimerdinger. I can beat him. And then they get the reality check. Or teams which I respect a bit more just say, okay, we're gonna try to figure an answer out, right? For example, the Mordekais I mentioned didn't work out, was bad, but I can respect the attempt to be like, okay, we're gonna beat you at your own game, because that's something we didn't expect, right? You start in a draft like, wait, Heimer, so we have to change what we planned because you plan for the fact that it's going to be banned.
That also leads into a question I actually have about coaching, which is I've always thought of all the coaching gigs in sports and esports, one of the most frustrating must be League of Legends, because the premise goes, every other sport you coach during the match as well. In League, you coach every second until they start playing the game, and then you absolutely literally are sort of locked away, unable to talk, watching, just going like, fuck, I hope they do what I say. So like that's the reason, by the way, I bring it into this question, because to me, you especially see it in scenarios like this, where there is an information gap. Like everyone's played against an Orianna mid. Not everyone has played against like a guy who's amazing on Draven who locks it in. And you see the teams where it's like, I know that coach tells his team before, now just don't even go into the Draven early, you know, don't like it. But then the players forget and they play like it's a solo queue game and it's up 2 kills. Like those like rare cases where they're going to get lost. Like you're just at the mercy of what happens in the game suddenly.
Yeah, pretty much. I also think it would be a nice change to have like a not 1 minute, but actually 5 minutes after each draft, so you can go with your team through what can they actually play in team fights, how can we play team fights. Right. I think the guess would be much better. Because, I mean, of course, you can say the other way around, that it's more exciting if you have a pick that they can't prepare for, right? So I guess it's a double-edged sword here. But yeah, I mean, every coach can say it, right? It happens so often. They're sitting backstage, you hear the plan, you're like, oh no, this is not going to work, and then you see them getting aced because of what should happen, but they can't see it in the moment, right? Which is human error, happens to every team. Just happens less to the best teams, I guess.
Right. Well, you talked already about like the perks period. This was also, if you remember, the summer split was that weird one where right for the first like fucking, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks was where that weird funnel meta existed, where all the memes of Jankos playing Braum and all that shit come from. But the part that people forget, because I did my interview with Perks about this, is because this was, like you say, like this is what people don't know about Perks. They all think because of the way the story went that he was humble and he was like, oh no, Caps is better than me, so he should join the team. The joke is he really does believe that shit of like, no, it's that I just thought I was better than like Rekkles and them, so I was going to just dominate from AD and then he could play mid. Well, if you know that, right, Perks rather unironically describes this period as one of his favourite metas, because as you remember, it was almost like, because they broke the meta of League, it was like Dota, and he just had everything funneled into him to be like the super god carry. And obviously he even said his ego was crazy. He thought like he was like the best player in the world. Like, give me some stories about this period, because this must be hilarious, because if you've ever had any player that thinks they're a carry, that's sort of secretly their dreams, like just give me everything.
and you could see like how jealous Caps also at the same time, but you just see this guy farming every camp in the game, getting every wave in the game, being 2 levels up. I don't know. It was funny to be the winning side, I guess, but I can imagine how frustrating it must be to lose against it. I'm kind of happy it's not there
And those
anymore,
strats were actually good at the time. They were working, right? He said that you would win every
Yeah.
scrim or something.
Yeah. And I think also, actually, when did we get the idea? Actually, that was something else, sorry. The Tarek Sona was something that the Rock Academy team back then showed us before we played on stage. But the file itself, yeah. I mean, you know Luca, right? You talk to him a lot. You can imagine a shit-eating grin every single time he had it, and he went mid lane. There's 2 levels up on the enemy mid lane, and he just shoves him in, invades the jungle, kills him there, starts giggling. He had a lot of fun, yeah. I think Jankos less so. But then again, that's why Jankos is the GOAT jungler, right? Even then, he has no ego, and he just thinks, okay, this is what has the best chance of winning, so I do it. Even if it looks weird if I play Braum or Morgana. Which the entire team had, right? I think this especially the mood we had 219, that can't be replicated. I think we found the pot of gold and the end of the rainbow for that year, and everything just felt so easy and fun.
Actually, along those lines, then, let me ask about Jankos, because obviously this was before you guys had won, and at the time he still had that whole rep of like he just chokes and he's in all the semis and he hasn't won the title, etc. Right? The thing I want to ask about with him was, I actually think when I look back now, I think everyone pushed that round. Like obviously it was factually correct. He hadn't won LEC and he'd been in loads of semis. That is true. But if I actually look back now, because he started his career like a lot of junglers, it's like I'm like a Lee Sin fucking pop off Elise, like gank everything. That makes you think that the guy's going to be like a carry jungler their career, or that it's just ganking, right? But actually, if you look at the biggest strength of his career, he is amazing at fucking setting everyone else up and protecting people and covering and being at the right spot. Like, if you actually do that as well, you're also going to have the best people around you. You are the jungler. Like, you're not really going to 1v9 the game, you know?
I mean, it sounds always cheesy, but he was the glue that held the team together, right? I think at that point in time, no other jungler in the West could have done the same thing with G2 that he did. It's not even close. From leadership to actually being also the counterbalance of personality to the Perks, because like one funny story is after we lost the World Finals, Perks and myself, we talked and we were like, okay, we have to be a bit more serious, right? Because we were still aloof as a team. And we went to Jankos and we said, come on, bro, like, let's try to change it, be a bit more serious during practice, right? Because he was the clown of the team. And we had the 2 most miserable weeks of our existence. Like, it just felt bad to go to work. It just felt bad to play. We like came back into him, like, come on, be the clown again. It's fine. We need you. And Jankos could just switch it, right? Like, he is very intelligent about how to like shift the mood in the team, I would say. If he knows his players well, and they also are open to it, because some players aren't, which also was an issue in 2021. But I mean, this guy's just a machine in game, out of game. Like, nothing but praise to Jankos. This guy, also, as you said, right? I think there's no jungler who's as resilient to being invaded as Jankos. Like, he always stays relevant. You can't really shut him out of the game. Of course, there's games where he ints, right, and goes like 0-5, whatever. Happens to every player in the world. But the way he, like, his first instinct is, if he's behind, like, how can I help my teammates, right? Which is something that sounds very easy to do. But to even also ask the questions that lead to it, which is really important when it comes to ask the correct questions, right? It's like, where do you need me? And then the player thinks about, okay, how can I use you? And then, like, sometimes one says, come here. But sometimes Jankos even sees it himself, so this guy's just really, really smart and always active. Maybe it's a sugar, I don't know, but yeah. I think, like, if you clone 5 Jankoses, like, just all the skill sets he has, besides maybe the hands, because now he's old, you probably would be like on the same level as the 219 roster.
Yeah, one thing about that as well that's weird is obviously he's another person. Like I give this example of Bad Stam League Show that Mickey X is also different, because you'd think he was like super shy, like, oh, I'm not that good. It's like he thinks he's the shit. That's the joke. It's like, you know, so along these lines, right? Jankos on camera, especially in these latter years, has played up the angle that he always seems not that confident. Like, oh yeah, we always lose every final 0-3. I'm old. I can't play the champ. And like, but the joke is, like, if you look how he plays, like you say, like, it seems like actually like he never gives up in the game. Like, he always thinks there's a way back in.
Yeah, and that was the entire roster back then as well, right? But I think him and Luca were the ones that actually drove it really hard. This whole looking for answers, right? Like, if you're behind and you ask questions about what to do in the game, your teammates don't have time to feel behind. If that makes sense,
right? Yes.
If you die,
take their mind
quiet,
off it, right?
Exactly. Like, if you die, it gets quiet. You're like, oh shit, we're behind, guys. What do we do? But they're like, oh, can we do this? Can we do this? And they don't even, like, this is the important part, right? Which I really appreciate about both of them, is very often they didn't say, let's do this, but they asked the question, what can we do?
Right.
Like, wonder, what can you do? So they made sure that every teammate gets included, and that's how we got to this crazy situation sometimes, right? Because you force your teammate to stay active. You don't give them a chance to feel bad about the current game state. So that's a really big quality that especially those two have. Caps to an extent as well. But I think that was also the main part, because I think if you look back, the most games we had, I mean, we were griefing a lot, right? But we were behind like 5K, 6K, 8K on the regular, and we came back, which was mostly because of just communication about what options we have. What can we do, what they don't expect, and just being active in the game and not being down.
It's also just so wild, though, because I want you to explain the relationship between those two. Because if people don't know, that wasn't a joke. Like, when they used to banter each other when they were on the other teams, HG, they were like low-key. So it was like, it wasn't enemies, like the frenemies thing. It's like they sort of loved to banter and shit talk. And the mad thing is, I remember thinking, like, how are they going to play in a team together? But as you say, if anything, it was one of the best combos of all time. Like, they sort of, they are like different, but it works somehow, right?
Yeah. I think it just helped that, I mean, in basketball, you would say ball respects ball, right? You work with him and you see the effort they put in. So I think that bridge has been gapped really quickly between them. Also, of course, I mean, it's no secret that Luka had like a higher understanding of macro than maybe anybody else. And Jankos probably was the one who was fastest in learning. So that's also why Jankos, let's say, became the right-hand man to Perps to regard, especially compared to bot lane back then. So yeah, that's also why they became such close friends. And also, of course, Perps is someone who plays a lot with his jungler, right? So naturally, over time, if they share the same ideas, and then both as well are very, very direct, but also take it really well. So they could just like clash at each other, talk about the game, and then go out of it better than before.
Plus, just to round out the Jankos topic, to me, I think he has one of the most underrated accomplishments ever, which was when he had the back-to-back MVPs with different mid laners, when he went from caps to perks. Like, mate, like, swap into a different style of mid laner. You don't just do that overnight. Like, and spoiler, both these guys privately, they all rave about this guy. I think he's the fucking best, mate.
Oh, for sure. I mean, of course, there's Diamond procs, right? We should never be forgotten. But it's the gap between Jankos and anybody else, maybe besides him, is so big it's not even funny. Like, it's actually a disgrace if he's not like Hall of Famer first ballot, if that makes sense. I also think now that he's on a losing team, the whole right angle of is he washed up? I think it's a bit too much, because in a way, I mean, I wouldn't compare myself to Jankos in that regard, but I have the same effect, is that if we get new viewers, they don't know the history. So if they go on a stream and they see, is Jankos washed up? They will not know how insane this guy is and was, right? So I think while they do it for Rekkles as a king of Europe or whatever, like, they should show more appreciation. Not because, I mean, of course it's funny, and they know Jankos can take it, but I think it's also important for his legacy that people who are new to the game understand that this guy is dominating Europe for the last, 7 years, right?
Yes.
And no one came close to longevity and peak. That's the important part, right? It's not like he was good for 1 or 2 seasons. He was the best for like 7 seasons in a row. But if there was a challenger, the challenger disappeared after 1 year. Like, there was no one who could consistently challenge him, right? Even close.
Yes.
So I think that's the most important part, and I think he should be celebrated for it.
Right, here's the question no one's ever asked, because G2 just did so well and won the 4 splits and won MSI and went all those well. Here's the question I have, which is an obvious one to me. It's why no one's ever asked it, though. When you make a super team like that, and on paper, like, all these players was fucking sick, they could all have been the best at their role, right? Obviously, we've seen many of those not work. So I always wondered, was there any time in the first split that you had them where either, like, you had to, like, change something massively, or things could have gone, like, if we lose this game or we have the bad week, could it ever have just fucked up completely and someone gets kicked, or you don't have the success you have? Like, obviously now it seems inevitable you would do it all, because it just kept, like, by the end it looked like the script was G2 always wins, but was there ever a moment early on where maybe it wouldn't have worked?
I think the the beginning for Luka was rough, of course, a different role, right, playing on this level. And we were lucky in a way, but we knew also that Mickey as a personality is very, like, he wants to help, and he's very, like, he has a lot of patience as well, right? So Mickey took the time to teach Luka the ropes in the beginning, and I think that was the only rough time. Secondly, as well, I guess, but that wasn't as bad. It's just that Caps is a griefer in scrims, or he used to be, or he still sometimes is, I bet. Which the team, I mean, Mickey and Caps, I would say, which Luka especially, and Jankos as well, didn't appreciate that much. But I think it never was like a big deal. I think there was never like a point where I was really worried. I think, the only time where the relationship broke down was towards the end of 2020, right? Where we had to make changes. I think at that point, especially with everything that Luka had in his real life happening, got to a point where we had to make a change. But up until then, no. It actually was smooth sailing. Of course, there were like some issues, like any team has, right? But I think the personalities just matched so well together that was pretty easy to work overall.
When your team at MSI beat T1, and remember, that wasn't even just fit, that was like fucking, they had Mata, that was a crazy lineup. And people forget they talk like they just beat nobody. Like, when you beat that team, did you feel like a genius? Like, because obviously no one beats Koreans in best of fives, man. That just doesn't happen. Like, what was the vibe? I bet it must have been a fucking mad ego rush. Come on.
Yeah, I think like just from the winning, like the rush of winning, the RNG one was higher.
Oh, right, really? Even though it wasn't to go to the final, right? Okay.
Yeah, because it wasn't expected, right? We were playing against the gods. They were on the golden road, like the one MSI. They were like undefeated in LPL. And we just beat them. That was really insane. But also, of course, that game was close second, right? And I actually don't remember the moment anymore. I think I was so like high on adrenaline that I can't picture what I did. Because I know RNG, I know that I actually ran to the elevator with DAMWON because we had like a different floor than the stage. But when we went on to T1, what did I do? I don't actually remember. I think I was just so like mind blown. But yeah, it was just like we knew that we can, especially because Korean teams were easier for us to play in scrims than Chinese. Besides DAMWON, that's a different story that happened at Worlds. But yeah, that was crazy. And as you said, right, back then it was not imaginable. Like you could maybe take one game out of a Korean team, but actually beating them was like still far-fetched. And then doing it in an important setting, like the semi-final for MSI, that was just crazy, yeah.
By the way, I asked Perks in my interview with him, like, the obvious question is, like, what if you'd played IG in the final? Because what people forget was, that was even the narrative, because they were the ones that beat the other G2 in the semis of the previous Worlds and won Worlds. So the matchup should have been, like let's see, you've just beaten the Koreans, now they come in, and that'd be like the wrestling fucking match. But it didn't happen. Now, obviously, on his angle, it was just, would he have beat them? And he thinks he would, because every top player thinks they'll win all the fuck game. Yeah. My question to you would be this. What would you have tried to do against them? Because obviously that's a really tough team to fucking coach against, right? They're the ultimate pop-off team.
Also for newer viewers, I don't think they realize how good Ricky and the Shy were back then, especially 2018, but 2019. That team was cracked. I still don't know how Liquid beat them, by the way. Like, I actually really griefed it. I actually really griefed it. And the thing is that, and a lot of credit to the wins against T1 in MSI and Worlds has to go to DAMWON. Because also his way of preparation against them, because we met, like, let's be honest, like, I think, and it's fair to say, we said team fighting wise, we cannot beat them on a fair ground. It's not possible because Korean just team fought better. So let's avoid situations, and he shows the patterns they do before every setup for like a Drake fight or something, and we could break them and avoid them basically, right? Which is something that he made sure we do. For example, if you look back, Khan was the top laner. No matter what, he would drop waves to go to Drake, no matter what. Moment before. So we made the conscious decision of we're going to give them 4 Drakes, and one that hopefully gets so far ahead that he's going to have more impact later on. Right. So that stuff was all conscious. Also, again, by
was that also why? Because obviously the thing that impressed people in that series you're talking about, when you would like instantly trade like a tower for the dragon or whatever, is that why your team was so fast to respond? Because they knew the setup, like if they head in like this, it's going to be like a dragon setup now. That's why they just knew already what to look for, sort of.
Yeah, and I think that's also why Korea back then was easy to play for us, because they were so structured that they had the game laid out from the beginning, right? There was no other way they could play, so we knew Khan is going to move no matter what. They're not going to think, how can we win next year? No, they're going to go for Drake and play towards it. So we knew, like, always in advance what they're going to do, probably. And it was still hard to play, right? Especially because they got to 4 Drakes sometimes. But it was a really good feeling. That's also why I think IG would have been harder, because IG doesn't play this way. They have also insane players, but they're not as formulaic. And I think that's also why DAMWON was so important for Korea as well, as a region, because DAMWON played way looser than any Korean teams did before, right? They played a bit more of the, I don't want to say G2 style, because I don't think it was us. I think it was also Chinese PL influenced, right? But that made bigger changes in how Korea played. So yeah, IG, I think it would have been a best of 5 for sure, like 5 games. I would not say, like Luca, that we would have beaten them for sure. I think there was a shot. But just to add context, how like big the differences were, right? And it also goes back to Worlds, because when we beat T1 in the semi-final, FPX was in the next room because they have won the series before that, the day before against IG. And they had to be there because of the pictures, right? The
right, yes.
And when we beat them, they were already celebrating. They were having a New Year's party. They were throwing shit around the room. They were dancing probably. I don't know. They were screaming so loud because it was a triangle, basically. They could not beat T1, apparently.
Right.
They had a really rough time beating them, whereas we could. But we could not break Chinese teams. Like, I think in scrims, it got a bit better in Madrid, like in scrims, but I think we were still like 30% win rate overall against IG and FPX. So yeah, I think just that the matchups don't work out that way.
Even though this is co-op, I'll just do it for the sake of European fans, right? So what you're saying is this, GrabbZ. If I remake the bracket of Season 9 Worlds, and it means that, let's say you guys still beat DAMWON, but then the other side of the bracket is FPX plays T1 and T1 wins, then you just win Worlds.
No, because
it was possible, right?
Because you have to play IG then semi-finals.
Oh, right. There's that. Okay. Right. You're right. Yes. No matter what, somewhere or other, you would have been fucked, right? Okay.
And even then, like even 2019, when we drew DAMWON, we all said, look at each other, okay, we're going home, guys. It's over. Like, we had, I'm not going to say we had no hope, but we were like already like coping, like, guys, okay, no luck, it's DAMWON. Like,
what does that imply then? Because here's the thing.
Insane.
Normally, when that's the case, like either you're just there in your head, they're beating in all the scrims, etc. Like normally, people just play even worse than the officials. Like they do just sort of give it up, and you'll get smashed 3-0, kind of like the final, basically. So how does a team? Because obviously in this case, like you're saying, technically on paper, T1 played the correct style. It was all about dragons at the time. Like they were playing the right style. DAMWON had this mad scrim record over you. How does a team still win, even with that like weighing over them? Like it sounds like the team themselves didn't think they were going to win the game. It's pretty rare you come through in the series if you don't believe you're going to win, right?
I mean, it wasn't that bad. It was just like, of course, we're going to play series to win, right? I think no one actually believed we're going to lose 3-0. And honestly, I also think it has to come with Wonders and Caps' personality, because Jankos and Perks are very stable, right? But these two, like Wonder and Caps, get unlocked if they play someone they respect deeply. Or
right.
If they think it's going to be hard. Like if you watch like Caps, right? I even said, I think, last year, G2 can only win if Caps was only 9 in playoffs, and he did. And they won the split. But these two just get a bit better if they play against like harsh odds or something. So I think that helped a lot. And also DAMWON played worse. Like they played way more scared on stage than in scrims. And just to put context here, like if we make a world, we could have done worlds. I think the issue we should tackle is our boot camp, which we did in London, in the Red Bull sphere. Because we thought, and we also said, we don't want to travel from Europe to Korea and then come back to Europe jet lagged, if they want to see anyways. And we assumed the teams are going to come earlier, with the Asian teams.
But they did like they did with NA now, right? And stayed in Asia for a while longer, right?
Exactly. And just to show like how big the gap was, the night after DAMWON arrived, they were jet lagged as hell. We scrimmed them. We lost 6-0.
They still beat you, okay.
And no game went over 50 to 20 minutes. Like
if they, obviously people sometimes are different in scrim, but if they could have actually played their scrim form, would they be the team that should have won Worlds?
I think in that year, like just from like, yeah, probably. And that's what they did next year, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like they grew a bit, they fixed the issues, and then they just became powerhouses overall. But this team was so cracked. Even in 2018, they were good already. I don't remember how they were called. They were a challenger team back then.
There was some hyper on them, I remember. It was them and Griffin.
Yeah, they were even insane back then. Like like you could see these players are just on a different level.
If people don't know, I think that was even the team that Rekkles famously said after like season 8 Worlds that he played against the team that became DAMWON. I think he said that in like a streaming clip or something. Yeah.
So that was the mindset we had when we drew DAMWON, right? We're like, okay, these guys were jet lagged. They stomped us so hard it wasn't even funny.
Yeah.
So let's just try our best, I guess. And yeah, I think that was the biggest issue because the entire bootcamp we played against NA teams. No disrespect, right? But Clutch Gaming, I think, was there against TL. I remember we played like one Fiddlesticks Nocturne bot lane because the games were not challenging either else. I think Mickey Perks even had like 8 kills or something in Fiddlesticks Nocturne bot lane. I mean, still through the game, but it's like, yeah, we didn't really learn. And then the Koreans came and we were like, okay, time to relearn everything we knew.
You know, one take that Perks had about the final was a very interesting one. I thought it'd be perfect to ask you about. He actually thinks that part of what ruined the final was the notion that coming in, people were sort of in their heads like, oh, they're better than us, so like we're not going to win. And he thinks that's why, even from game one, it's like the drafts are a bit weird and you try and all gimmick shit. He actually thinks essentially you should have sort of played, from what I remember, you should have played a normal game and not like that was almost like you were at panic stations from the beginning. Or he thinks like if game one hadn't have gone so badly, they wouldn't have tried the others. What do you think on this angle? Because it was definitely an unusual drafting series, right?
Yeah, I mean, game one didn't even go badly, right? We had like an in-up even, top side. I think the game was pretty even, and then we lost a team fight. to a degree, I think he's right, but I also think the bigger issue was the general fatigue we had. Because we had like MSI the same year, right?
Right.
So I think actually in Paris, everybody was just feeling dead, it felt like. As in, only 1 more week, guys, only 4 more days, only 3 more days, we got this, right? Like, push through it. And one thing also, I'm not going to mention which team, because some players are selective. We got griefed by European teams in practice in a way where...
Classic.
So we get the European team, who was like in the Challenger series back then, or like EL, so not an LEC team, agreed to Scrim for us. I had to back them to Scrim in our patch. I think it was like a long discussion. And then we play against DAMWON, right? The Roma. And then they lock in Z twice in a row. And captures got tilted, right? Like, what was this practice? Like, come on, like, you're trying to help a European team to win Worlds and you do this to us. So I think that was a bit tilting. Which also, of course, gave us false confidence in the whole pack thingy. Because, the idea was, you know how FPX plays, right? Like, Chris, Tian, and DAMWON are like really, really good mid support, jungle free. And so we thought Pyke can't be really attacked because he's so safe. And also he can match the ropes. But then, of course, if they invade you as 3, Caps can't join because he can't face check them either. So the whole theory went to shit, but that's also because we couldn't practice it against any team that actually was good enough to punish it, right? So, of course, it looked way worse than in theory it was. And in hindsight, of course, like, now it makes sense. It's like... But we felt confident in it. We didn't pick it to troll. We thought this couldn't work. Game 2, there was a discussion with... We had the Yasuo bot lane, and I told him to ban Galio. And we had discussion on stage where they both tell me he doesn't, like, Chris doesn't play Galio support. I'm like, yes, he does. Like, no, he doesn't. And then they refused to ban it, and then he picks it, and we're like, okay, go next. This game is over. It's unplayable for Yasuo, so...
That's painful for a world finals, though. That's that's like a funny story to BO1 in LEC. That's brutal for game 2 of the final.
But the best thing is, again, in this team, and also saying it on draft already, like, no matter how stomped we got, it was funny. It was like, okay, guys.
Right, people could laugh it off.
Just go next. And then game 3, I think, was the biggest mistake by me, because we could flex every champ, and we had Vega Ezreal, right, in that Galio. And I think if I just made the call that we put Vega bot and put Ezreal mid, which is a matchup that Caps played it to Galio already, where he has pressure, the game gets so much easier. But instead, like, I don't know, maybe at that point we actually had panic, or like we like just trying to like do something secure. We kept Vega mid and Ezreal bot, and then the game got harder. And I think we were fine until like 25 minutes, and then like Tian was sitting in the bush for like 10 minutes and flanked us. So yeah, I think Luca is right in regard that the belief wasn't 100% there, but I think the bigger impact was just the general, just fatigue. Cass was sick the week before, but I'm not gonna talk about that because probably FPX also with sickness. This happens during tournaments, right? Been on the hotel the entire weeks before. So I think just general fatigue was the biggest issue. And that's also why, I was very vocal in 2020 about how we want to avoid being fatigued, how we don't take it seriously in the beginning, ask to have the energy later on, right? So that all stemmed from how we were in Paris, because, I remember entering the room and the atmosphere was just dead on the ground and people were not talking. Everybody just wanted to go home, basically. Even though it's weird, right? Because everything in your brain is like excited for the World Finals, but at the same time, you're also just like, I can't wait for the day afterwards to go home, right? And it's a really weird feeling, which I read, afterwards I read a lot, and apparently this is normal for sports, like for athletes, if they've had a tournament. That's just how, it's not an esports problem or something like they don't want to win, it's just, that's how people feel. Because they're together for like 6 weeks on the road, you can't see their faces anymore, you just want to go home, be alone, and just push through. But I think that was the biggest issue, and I think if we had a better way of, like, if I had the knowledge before and I could have structured the season better in terms of fatigue, we also would have a way better shot at finals than just having the belief of beating them. So yeah.
By the way, if I just rewind a bit to that summer split, the one where famously it was that bizarre format where you had to play the 2 best-of-5s against FNATIC and they both went to the 5 games. Yeah. I notice if you talk, even privately, but on camera, they all admit it as well. Almost everyone in G2 does admit, like, even though, like, you want to just pretend, like, swag, like, who cares? Never in doubt. We're always going to win game. I've heard it's one where people actually did think, like, shit, maybe we should have lost those ones. Even like, what do you think on that one? Because that was definitely a series, by the way, with some of those fucking craps moments,
Oh yeah, especially in game 3 with the Kaiser, I was so lost. I was so lost, I don't even know how we won. I actually don't know. But the thing is that this G2 roster, with like the perks ideation, had the belief, like, it's not the cockiness, it's like in your brain, you can't lose. And it doesn't mean you think they're bad. It's just like you believe in yourself and the team so much that this can carry you such performance, right? Again, the same thing I said before. We're 0-2 down. They're like 8K ahead. And their brains don't allow them to think about losing, basically. Because it's still like, we're still better. We can win this. And this is basically what happened, right? Which they didn't have, especially that series. Like, they crumbled after the first loss they had. In the finals, I think it was a bit more like we won, they won, we won, right? So it was a bit different than the reverse sweep. But yeah, like there was just this unwavering belief, I would say, which carried us through. But yeah, these games were really close, and for sure. I mean, I think if people didn't know or like didn't watch it, just the fact that we had like a Rakan Pyke first pick meta that only these two teams had, because with Hilly and Mickey and peak form, that was some crazy drafting. Like that was fun. It was fun for sure.
Also, the other thing is as well, like, I notice whenever people talk about this team, the G2 super team, and like in the history, because I always said, like, people overrated the idea all of Europe was just on this level. It's like they weren't really. Like, there was you, FNATIC was a one level below, but still pretty good. Then the rest of them were like way down here. So the thing I think people did take for granted, dude, is the reason why that team will go down as one of the best of all time, as you've mentioned in this interview, is it's not even like they just beat you from minute one to the end. Like, actually, that FNATIC team could do that. They could, they could have a great first 15 minutes and just so far ahead, you can't do it. This team was famous for just coming back from crazy goal deficits. Like, you're actually, those stats they show on the LCS guys are legit. Like, you really are, when you're down X amount of gold, supposed to lose like 90% of the time. When someone has this many more dragons, they have, those stats work out in the long run. This team just defied all those trends.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is something that, of course, gameplay is important, but again, people can't see it and can't know. But just mentality plays in so much about this, right? If you go back to football, there's in Germany you call a Bayern-Dusel, which means the luck of Bayern Munich. Because every time they're down 0-1, they will score a goal in the last minute.
Right.
It just happens. But at the same time, you have to force that luck, right? You have to believe that you can. And I think it was the same thing with that roster, where just like they couldn't imagine themselves losing, especially not in Europe. And that's just something, again, that's really lucky, because all 5 players said it. As soon as one player looks differently or talks differently, it brings everybody down, right? That's also, again, team culture is really important. But yeah, that year was just, weird. But again, I also want to say that, of course, like in 2018, we were not good enough to push FNATIC to a level where they could win Worlds, I think, because we just beat RNG and that was basically it, right? It's not like we were actually contenders. Whereas I feel like FNATIC was a big part of why the 2019 G2 was
to have another good team to play against and sort of test yourself against, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I think it's always important. As you mentioned, I think I was even very vocal about 2019 and 2020 that Europe should, and 2018, that Europe should not be happy about the results and think like we're actually there, because the gap was so massive. And to this day still, I went to 18, 19, 20, to 3 Worlds. And every Worlds, the same thing happened, right? We think we're good, we come there, and we get shitstormed by Asia. It happens every tournament. And it probably happens still. I'm pretty sure of it, right? So the gap is still there, and that's just something you have to realize. But at the same time, I think this could be a different topic, right? But Scrim culture in Europe doesn't permit actual growth either. So yeah, we'll always need, like right now, we will always need a team which is a super team, like actually has individual skill, and also has the luck of having matching personalities. Else you're not gonna go far in Worlds. That's just the reality right now.
Well, let me ask a question about that then, because this is actually something that I have found infuriating from talking to people in League of Legends, mate, which is, I can tell you in Counter-Strike, there are teams that also fuck around in scrims, or people just do everything crazy aggressive and then they don't do it in the real match. But actually, a long time ago in Counter-Strike, a lot of the coaches and in-game leaders I know did figure out that logic of the way you practice is probably going to be reflective of how you'll play in the game. So actually, you don't want to be the guy who's fucking around and then you go, don't worry, I wouldn't do that in the game. So you're sort of training yourself to play that way. So the question I have is this, right? What infuriates me in League is the reason why everyone used to tell me, stop fucking picking Rogue, they're never going to win the LEC. Because they all said, like, we play them in scrims, they're the exact same team, they're just this boring team that plays the same way. And I was like, and I would then ask them, but didn't you also tell me that your favourite team to practice against? They were like, yeah, of course, because they play the way they do. It's like, bro, if everyone did that, wouldn't the whole region just be sick? Because as far as I know, Koreans do that. Like, this is where fans will get mixed up. You'll have heard stories where Koreans are mad disrespectful in scrims. That's when they're at the boot camp at Worlds and they want their coach to stop booking scrims with the 100 Thieves or Clutch Gaming, like you're saying. Like, that's when they play the disrespectful shit intentionally. Like, otherwise, they want to play the proper way. Like in Europe, like, people have heard the stories. I've heard still the case with Vitality now. Not Vitality. I heard Mad Lions was like this in their bot lane. I've heard there are still scrims where the bot lanes are just like 10-0 or 0-10 after like a few minutes. Like, no game plays like that. We're not the LPL. So, like, what do you think on this topic? Because it feels like scrims, you're not even almost preparing for the game. You're doing something different, right?
Yeah, it's just sad, and the whole structure doesn't allow it, right? Because in LPL and SDK, if you play like this in scrims, you get replaced. There are like 50 people behind you running a challenge every day who wants to be pro, you get replaced. Whereas here, like, let's say, again, I'll just talk about my own player's Caps, right? He has some games in scrims where he ends, which, of course, like, human error can happen. But what do I tell him? I tell him not to end. He's like, yeah, sure. But how do I punish him? It's Caps. My Canadian mid laner, I don't even know his name right now. I can't. Like, he knows he's untouchable, right? And, like, for example, people always talked about back then when Faker got benched, right? But this is the best thing you can do as a coach. If you actually have someone behind Faker who's good enough to still win games, and you bench the GOAT, it just shows the entire team we have to practice hard, right? But in Europe, it's really hard to do because the gap is just that big, especially for top teams. So, and then we go back to players, and this is also, again, cultural difference, because Asia, and people, if they don't know, has a culture that if you're not first, you're nothing.
Yes.
In society, right? Which also is the reason why these countries have a high suicide rate, because many people
expectations
feel like
are crazy.
nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So it's a grinding society, whereas in the West, of course, it's more freedom, more individualistic. That also means that the players we get, especially because there is no youth system like in traditional sports, they come in as 16, 17 years old. They are good at the game. They've never actually learned how to practice in an environment, what it entails to be a professional, and they just sit there and play the game they liked, right? And they're like, no, I don't want to end, but they don't see the long-term repercussions that it has. Like, their brain doesn't function in that way, right? So I think that's very frustrating and something people always go to coaches, but with the material we have, especially if you think about it this way, right? I'm not sure, maybe correct me if I'm wrong in Counter-Strike, right? But in Counter-Strike, I think it's easier to carry someone who's inting. Because, in theory. Because at worst, like, even if he ends a round, he loses the best round, right? And I think if you like have a really good day, you can like top frag someone and you have bottom frag, you can
exactly. You can make up for it.
Whereas if in League, if you have a 0-5 teammate, you should not be able to win.
Yes.
Because like it's not round based, so you can't expect your AD carry to be 5-0 in return.
Yes.
So you have 10 players, and each day on that scrim day, someone else is the enter. That means the entire practice goes to shit.
Right.
And then the second part also is, which is again discipline, and again something that is really hard to fix if the players don't have the mindset themselves. If a team is behind, like every single time a player says, can we remake or can we go next? You know that the game is over, basically. Like, there's no point of telling them to keep playing. It happens every single time. There's like you have 3K ahead of 50 minutes, and he pauses the game. Can we remake or go next? You say, no, please play it out. Okay, sure. They play the 20 minutes. They go 5 mid lane, run the fuck down, all die, you take Nash, you win the game. Like, cool. I guess we learned something, right? Like, the whole discipline just of being a professional is on average not there. Of course, there are players who go against the norm, but you need 10 players for it to work. Or you need a system where you can actually bench these players for players who are equally or almost as good as they are, which financially is really hard to do. I respect it. I know that it's a business after all. In Korea, they pay them scraps, basically, right? They're happy to have a bet, basically. And that's fine for them in the society. Whereas in Europe, you would have a fucking lawsuit against you. But this overall, just the whole structure makes it impossible for long-term growth of the league, I would say. Now, it got better to the regional leagues, right? Especially France and Spain, who invest there, bring talent up especially. So it's not that bleak, but that explains for me always, and I talked about this since 2018, why the region will always rely on one team who got lucky enough to have 5 matching players and personality and being at top of the game to challenge the Korean teams.
Another question I had along these lines is, when people talk about that notion, it's still said to this day where they're like, you can coach them, but obviously you would never tell the player what to do. It's like, yeah, in lane with his champion, if he's really good at mid lane and playing let's say like Rise or something, yeah, you're not going to tell like fucking Caps how to play that. But the part where I think fans are really missing is this. Mate, if you only knew how many pro players, I'm talking even really good players, have very limited actual understanding of macro in the game. But especially because if people don't know, you have to be on the cutting edge of all the VODs for that. It's changing constantly with how people, because obviously it's a meta game, depends what the other person does in response to what you did or what they do. So like that part I've always noticed, there's a reason why in teams there are super legendary players who have they just have the gift of that, or there's a coach that just has the right relationship with a player and they implement that on the game, because that's the area where it feels like there's always work to be done, right? No one ever really has the perfect macro read on what you're supposed to do as a team.
Yeah, especially also because the macro leads into micro, right? Like there's always something that your champ specifically can bring out. For example, in G2, as I mentioned, right, I'm not going to tell Perks how to play LeBlanc. So I basically, how we went is that I presented the structure of how, like, with pressure and tempo, the play should have worked. And then the players chipped in and said, yes, but with the champion, I can do something else because I have the specific champions. And the only reason this works is, first of all, because my players are fucking smart. I'm not going to take credit for that. Like, no coach could be on that level. Like that, especially that year Perks and Caps were, just in creativity. Even one with Camille, like the flanks he found and stuff. Like Mickey Rakan, like every player, right? But basically, we got to a level where the basics were so intuitive. I think I take a little bit of credit there for like repetition of saying this is the basic stuff, right? This is where we should be. And then the players could be, okay, I have Ryze now, but I can ult us there. I have LeBlanc, I can take this extra wave. I have this shit. So how it worked in G2 especially, I think this can also only happen if basics are down, is when we shifted, for example, right, on meta rotation, there was not a lot of communication because everybody knew the role. Everybody knew, okay, the wards have to be here, I have to be here. So if someone said something, and very often the fans heard they're inting, that means something is out of the ordinary, and the trust was there in the teammate to make a call, which goes against the norm. So that's why the follow-up was so fast as well, right? Because if the player did not think this was good, he would just follow the plan. So that's why we're also so good at punishing people for inting. Because, let's say Mickey just saw there are 2 pixels above where they should be, now we can kill them, and this is worth going for instead of going for the normal setup. So that's also what the teammates are good, but for that you need 5 players who are just really good at the game and understand the basic mechanics of how to shift. Which again, like, I'm still like very vocal about this. Like, if you watch LEC, like, most teams don't have the basics down. They happen so, like, if you compare LEC to even LPL, which we always say, like, as Europe, they're so wild that there's just random shit. I think they have less random deaths than Europe has. I think, like, LPL has, like, individual deaths, sure, but, like, if the Shy, like, goes 0-5 individually, okay. But macro-wise, they don't have random deaths, normally. Or, like, less. Whereas in Europe, we have, like, 12 kills in a game, and you don't know how 10 of them happened, or why it happened, just because someone for a wave he couldn't. So I think that's also one, again, but it goes back to Scrim culture, right? Which is just a very, it's just not a nurturing environment, and I know it's like a hard pill to swallow for most fans because belief is important. But I also think we should start holding coaches like myself and players more accountable, and that also needs orgs though who are willing to change. And for that, I must say, big credit to BDS, right? We were 9th place, I think, and they paid a full expenses bootcamp to career, just because I said the players are not working hard. Like, this is what I want, and this is what the league should be there, right? So big credit for them, and if we have more of these orgs who are willing to spend in these regards, then long-term wise it'll be better.
I work hard to make sure I get mine, but no one can do it all on their own, and that's why everyone needs a support group. And so I have my Patreon community. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask a question in one of these monthly AMAs? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are? Or maybe you want to take part in one of those long discussions where you can help set the table of the topics and join in with other like-minded people? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today via the Patreon link below, as the following people who I very much appreciate did: Matt Pugnich, Rakula, Ahmed Haju, Kyle, Bot Pounder 420, Thooorin, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Gore, Tosh, and always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion.